On day 75, the war is back in a holding pattern for the second time, and certainly it's likely to stay that way while President Trump conducts this summit with Xi Jinping in China. Of course, the Iran war hovers over this whole summit for the rest of us. And when he was asked about whether the Chinese should help on Iran, President Trump said, "I don't think we need any help over Iran." Well, actually, you do, Mr. President. And your officials have been speaking quietly to Chinese officials for quite some time to get them to put more pressure on Tehran, for Tehran to agree more quickly the sort of deal that we think might emerge to end this war. And there's something more specific as well. This week, the State Department sanctioned 3 Chinese satellite companies. And they say that these satellite companies gave their images to Iranian targeteers so that the Iranians could target American bases in the Gulf. Now, the Chinese will say, well, these are just private companies, but we all know there's no such thing as a private company in China when it comes to what they do. If the Chinese didn't approve of what they did, then they would actually stop it very, very quickly. So the Americans have got something very specific to talk about. It's hard not to believe that Iran will not hang over the summit in a big way. And what worries the Taiwanese in particular, and many of the allies, is that in order to get a deal, particularly an economic deal or something on Iran, that the president may soften on his view of Taiwan, soften in terms of his opposition to the Chinese ever taking over Taiwan. When the president sees this sort of map, he always comments apparently on how small Taiwan is and how big China is. But it's actually a very sensitive issue, and it goes back an awful long way to 1949. And the Chinese have always said that they will take Taiwan, if necessary by force, but eventually they'll take it. And the Americans have always said that if you take it by force, we will react. They've never said what they will do. They keep that ambiguous deliberately. But they said we will react and we will not be indifferent. And the worry is that President Trump will back away from that a little bit. And this week, there seemed to be an element of that. The United States has agreed, Congress has agreed, a $14 billion aid package, mainly military and security aid, to Taiwan. That aid package just needs presidential authorization. When he was asked about this, President Trump said, well, I'll talk to Xi Jinping about it. No previous president would ever have said that. The idea that they have to consult with China before they sell arms independently to Taiwan. And that really worries the Taiwanese. Now, that sort of off-the-cuff comment, Trump may or may not have known what he was saying or have understood the importance of it. But for the Chinese, that's a pretty big diplomatic prize to have if they can hold him to it in future negotiations. So the Taiwanese are extremely nervous, as are most of the Western allies, that President Trump may be pushed into a position in this summit as a result of needing something on Iran that he gives too much on Taiwan. Meanwhile, in the Gulf itself, something interesting developed today. A very large crude carrier, which is a big oil tanker, left through the Strait of Hormuz. And it came towards Larak Island, and it went down to the Gulf of Oman, and there, round about there, it anchored as of about 1 o'clock today. Interesting issues about this. One is, this very large crude carrier wasn't carrying Iranian oil, it was carrying Iraqi oil. But it went out via Larak Island, which shows that the Iranians had obviously let it go through. That's the channel that they approve of. That's where you pay your tolls if you're going to pay them. And then it went out, and then it anchored. It didn't carry on because it's carrying oil to China. Now, maybe it chose to anchor. Maybe the Americans told it to anchor. Maybe it's going to be an issue as to whether they let it through or not. 2 previous tankers carrying oil to China have already gone through. It would be surprising if this wasn't the third. And in a way, the story of this particular tanker, in a sense, it sort of encapsulates the nature of the global relationship at the moment between President Trump and President Xi Jinping over the next 2 days in Beijing.